Welcome back to Chess TV. We've prepared a new exciting episode for you with a lot of chess. We've got a new story in the chess history where Arne Johansson has found a previously forgotten chess artifact. We of course also have a complicated chess puzzle, and Albert continues with the series of Machiavelli and Alfred presents the continuation of the Queen's Indian in the opening school. But before we hand over to Albert, here's an update on what's been going on in the world of chess. The 2012 European Individual Women Chess Championship is taking place from the 2nd to the 13th of March at the Anatolian Hotel in Gaziantep, Turkey. Shortly after, the European Rapid Championship and the European Blitz Championship will follow in the same venue. All three events have a combined prize fund of 150,000 euros, the biggest prize fund in the history of European women chess events. The winner of the Women's Championship will win over 20,000 euros, besides the honor of the title, of course. The inaugural games appeared not to be easy for the favorites, as the first round brought some surprising results. The Georgian top woman had a bad day as the second-seeded Nana Zaginze was defeated by Gulnay Mammadova. The rating favorite Anna Muschuk could have lost her game as well, but was lucky to survive against the Russian Anastasia Savina, who got a winning position but let her advantage slip away in the time trouble. Well, if you're looking for somewhere to spend your summer vacation and want to combine it with chess, we've got the perfect solution for you. Situated in the beautiful mountains, the 30th Andorra Chess Open is set to take place from July the 21st to the 29th at the Hotel St. Gotthard in Andorra. The tournament can only take 180 players, so hurry up and register. The Polish championships have just been concluded and we have had two new champions. Well, that's not entirely true, since Mateusz Balter won the Open class for the third year in a row. Quite an impressive performance. The Women's Championship was won by Iveta Railic, so congratulations to both champions. It's soon time for the Capablanca Memorial, the 47th to be exact. It will be played between May the 3rd to the 15th at the Riviera Hotel in Havana, Cuba. The elite group will once again be a 6-player double round robin. And so far, Grandmaster Vasily Ivanchuk, a 5-times winner of Capablanca Memorial, Grandmaster Lenny Dominguez, a 3-times winner, and Grandmaster Lazaro Bruzon, who has also won once, have confirmed participation. With that setup, all we have to say is good luck to all players. And now it's time for Albert, so here we go.
Welcome back. Last week we talked about princes who reach power through atrocities and create autocracies. And today I thought we would talk about the other method for a person of the people to become the prince. The democratic way, that is, by the people's trust. In those situations, this prince creates a civil principality. Machiavelli explains it like this: a principality is created either by the people or by the authorities, two opposing forces that exist in every city. The contradiction is because of the fact that the people do not want the authorities to decide over and repress them, while that's exactly what the authorities want to do. This conflict can result in 3 different conditions: principality, liberty, and anarchy. A principality rests either on the people or the authorities, depending on who has the upper hand. When the authorities can't defend themselves against the people, they choose one of their own, which they make the prince, and seek his protection. When the people, on the other hand, find that they can't defend themselves against authorities, they direct their support to a person that they make the prince, and then seek his protection. Machiavelli says that it's much easier for an elected prince to legitimize and keep his rule, because those who got their power by the authorities regard the people they have around them as their equals and find it difficult to command them, while the elected prince does not have those kind of bonds and has no or very few around him who are not ready to obey him. In this respect, a chess player is just like the elected prince. He has to take care of and manage his people so that they obey him. And he achieves his goals by that. And the similarities between the way a chess player and a prince should act continue. The prince, who is democratically elected, must rely on his people, and the people can be very uncertain. Similarly, a chess player in itself has no authority on the chessboard. It is only by caring for and controlling his pieces that he has power. According to Machiavelli, an elected prince should be used to commanding people, be brave and unafraid of adversity, carefully prepared, and give the people hope with his actions and his personal courage, because then the people will never abandon the prince. I think this is very much how the chess player needs to act. You have to be able to command your pieces with an authority, be brave and unafraid of your opponent's threats, and be very carefully prepared for him. It is also important to protect your pieces, nurture them, and not just exchange them or sacrifice them as soon as you can. A wise prince knows that he depends on his people and that the people are dependent on him. And if they're not, then they should be. Because to reach great achievements, the prince and the people need to be codependent on each other.
For some time now, we have been analyzing the Queen's Indian, and we have had the White's fourth move, G3, in mind. In this week's episode, we'll take a look at White's A3. This is the second most popular move after G3, and it's quite obvious why it is played. The plan is simply to block the black squared bishop from developing and to enable White from developing the knight to C3 without having to be afraid of black pinning it by playing bishop to B4. Like after White's G3, black can choose between bishop to B7 and bishop to A6. Those are not the only options, but they are by far the most popular ones. Bishop to B7 is followed by White's foretold knight to C3. In the Nimzo Indian and as well in the Queen's Indian, black fought for the E4 square, something that has changed here since the top priority now lays on the D5 square. Because if black would play a slow development move such as bishop to E7 for example, White should simply advance in the center with D5, and after a castle, White reaches a comfortable position after his seventh move E4. Before we leave this position, we notice that there are a lot of free black squares in the White position. This enables black to, instead of playing bishop to E7, to play G6, preparing to develop the bishop on G7 and to fight White in the center on the black squares. Black's most popular option is simply to stop White from playing D5 by playing D5 himself. This move might seem awkward to play because of what it does to the bishop on B7, but allowing White to play D5 would be an even worse scenario for the bishop. And actually, this also strengthens the control over the E4 square. In this position, White has to choose between exchange on D5 and bishop to G5 and queen to C2. The exchange on D5 is the most common choice, and it leaves black to choose between recapturing with either the knight or the pawn. To take on D5 with the pawn is the more solid variation, and it often leads to long games where both sides fight for small positional advantages. White can now mainly choose between G3 and bishop to F4, while black on the other hand wants to play C5. As we see here, the positions are quite different from the ones we're used to. This because of White's A3, which removed the possibility of bishop to B4, and since it allowed knight to C3, which threatened D5, a plan we haven't come across in our earlier episodes. So let's see what happens if black, instead of taking with the e-pawn on D5, recaptures with the knight. This is the more dynamic option, and this move will most likely open up for a fight for the initiative. Among others, White can play queen to C2 now and aim on playing E4. You might wonder why White doesn't play E4 right away, And the answer is simply that black wins the e4 pawn after an exchange on c3, followed by bishop takes on e4. After queen to c2, black develops his bishop to e7, and after e4 an exchange on c3 follows. White has control over the center, but before black can try to fight back, he needs to castle kingside, which he does now, and white takes the opportunity to develop his bishop to d3, which is followed by c5. After white's castle kingside, we have reached a position where white is a bit more active in the center, but where black has a rather comfortable position himself. Because white's strong central pawn can always become easy targets, something white has to watch out for. A simple plan here would be to play queen to c8, threatening an exchange of pawns on d4, followed by queen exchange on c2. And if white would try to avoid this by playing queen to e2, black could play bishop to a6, exchanging bishops. Important to know is that exchanges are favorable for black in this position. White needs his pieces to hold up his active position, while black's passive pawn moves have created a solid position for the endgame. But with that, we'll end this week's episode of the Opening School. We'll be back again next week, so see you then.
Today I thought we should solve a chess puzzle from an endgame position. The advantage with these kind of chess puzzles is that it's easier to analyze several variations, but the puzzles can still be really tricky. The puzzle is taken from the book 16-Minute Chess 2 Movers Checkmate Puzzles, put together by Bogdan Wolf. So, white checkmates in 2 moves. Good luck! When you get a position of this kind in a game, the first moves that seems natural are queen f5 check and pawn h6. The queen move is answered by king h8, which is followed by king g6, king g8, and queen c8 checkmate. And on black's answer g6 on the queen f5 check, we have a checkmate in 4 moves. Pawn h6 also leads to a checkmate, but within 3 moves after a capture on h6 check, king f6, h5, and queen g7 checkmate. So what about queen f7? Well, it does not give us a checkmate in 2 moves either, because after king h8, king g6 is a stalemate, and no other move seems to work except of h6, g takes on h6 check, king g6, h5, and queen h7 checkmate. But that's a checkmate in 4 moves too. So if we take a look at the black king's position, we see that he has no squares to go to here. So let's try to do something different and pretend that it's black's move right now. We can then see that black's only move is g6 with the pawn. And when our pawn captures the black pawn, we have a checkmate. So this means that if we only perform a drifting move, we have a checkmate in 2 moves. But the question is then, which moves meet the criteria without destroying the checkmate possibilities? A drifting move with the queen does not work, because it is important that she stays where she stands so that the move h captures on g6 becomes a checkmate. So we're looking for a king move. Our king can go to 4 different squares, but one of the options is extra good due to the king's possibilities of still guarding the h6 square. So we move the king to f5. Black can here answer with 3 moves, with g6 check, g5, or king h6. On g6 with the pawn, our pawn captures the pawn with a checkmate. If black instead chooses g5, we capture the pawn again, but this time with an en passant and with a checkmate too. And if black plays king h6, We answer with Queen H8 checkmate. Well, chess puzzles with so few pieces on the board are not always super easy, but just like this one, really tricky. As you noticed, it required the ability to analyze a lot of small moves quickly, moves that didn't seem so important but really are in chess. It's just like the chess legend Reti once said, a knowledge of tactics is the foundation of positional play. And with those words of wisdom, it's time for some chess history with Arne Johansson. Enjoy!
As Antonia mentioned some time ago, I have written a book about the early Swedish chess literature, and I devoted special attention to the first printed Swedish chess book that appeared in 1771, and its author Carl Wilhelm von Koenigstedt. I have tried to trace all copies of the first edition of that book, and in my book I have included pictures of the title page of all three known copies in Sweden. They can be found at the Royal National Library in Stockholm and in the Uppsala and Lund University libraries. But in my book I also mentioned that the possibility that the American Daniel Willard Fisk possibly could have owned a copy. And I will soon return to the reason for this, but the clue triggered Rolf Littorin to search his great collection, and I will soon return to what that led to. But first I would like to say a few words about the person Daniel Willard Fisk. He was born in 1831 in Ellisburg, New York, and already during the sophomore year at the university he went over to Europe to study Scandinavian languages. He ended up at Uppsala University where he studied for 2 years. During that time he made his living as a correspondent to the New York Herald Tribune. He then returned to New York and worked as librarian, and during that time he started collecting books, and among them Icelandic books, a collection that later became enormous. Fisk also became a chess enthusiast and was involved in the organization of the first American Chess Congress 1857. Well, he was actually the one who took the initiative to this event, and he wrote the classic tournament book, although it took him almost 2 years to finish the 561-page thick book. He also participated in the tournament, although without much success. On the other hand, the tournament meant that he came to get acquainted with the new star and tournament winner, Paul Morphy, and he started the chess magazine The Chess Monthly with Paul Morphy as co-editor. But that one only survived for a few years. After some trips back and forth between America and Europe, he became professor in Northern European languages at Cornell University in 1869, and also the head librarian there. In 1880, he married Jenny Graw, who was the daughter of one of the founders of Cornell University. She was considered to be very beautiful and immensely rich, but she died in tuberculosis only 14 months after they married. At the webpage Sarah's Chess Journal, with this address, there is a description of how Fisk started a legal fight with the Cornell University after his wife had donated a sum to the university that was greater than was allowed to receive according to their statutes. He actually won the fight, and $500,000 was repaid to him, and another $500,000 was returned to the rest of the family. Well, that must have been an astronomical sum at that time. For natural reasons, he quit his position at Cornell and moved over to Italy, where he continued his research and restored an elegant mansion for himself. He visited Sweden and many other countries during this time. Well, he had a special interest in Iceland and in Icelandic books and chess, but he actually visited Iceland only once, in 1879. However, he started the first Icelandic chess magazine, but that was printed in Venice. He also wrote the book Chess in Iceland and in Icelandic Literature, which has become a classic and is sought after by collectors. It appeared in 1905, 1 year after his death. He is buried together with his wife at the Cornell University after he left $500,000 in his testament to the university, along with a major part of his fantastic book collection, which today is valued at about $30 million. His chess library, consisting of 1,200 volumes, was donated to the National Icelandic Library. And as Rolf Littorin found in an Icelandic source, that collection also includes a copy of the first edition from 1771 of Königsstedt's book, which hence is the fourth known copy of this rare book. I contacted the library and was able to get this picture of the title page of the book. But with that little addition to the Swedish chess history, we end for today, but we'll return next week, so see you then.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode and that you'll be back again next week. So hope to see you then. Bye.